Hey, welcome to the Wildscast. I just finished an amazing conversation with Rabbanit Racheli Frankel, who's an unbelievable inspiration. I've been following her for many, many years. She unfortunately became quite famous because her son Naftali was one of the three boys that were abducted by Hamas in 2014 and killed. And I just talked to her about that experience and how that experience over 10 years ago has informed and in some way inspired her to take the role she's taken since October 7th. And I asked her about the ceasefire and the current hostage deal and taking hostages because her own son was taken as a hostage and ultimately killed. And what does this mean to her and how to deal with some of the emotional aspects? She's an incredibly wise, emotionally intelligent, and she's a Torah scholar. She's an incredible Torah scholar. And we spent the second part of our discussion really getting into Torah ideas and specifically the role of Torah education for women, how it's been developed in literally the last 10 to 20 years. So many more amazing Torah female scholars on the scene, more in Israel than the United States. And how can we build that up a little more here in America? So take a listen. Remember to subscribe and to get a little inspiration and insight into the current situation from a very wise woman who's seen a lot. Thanks for joining and welcome to the Wildscast. Welcome to the Wildscast, everyone. I am so honored to be able to host Rabbanit Racheli Frankel. Welcome, Rabbanit. Welcome, Racheli. Thank you so much for coming on.
Racheli will do. Thank you so much. It's my honor.
Really, really appreciate it. You have been an incredible force and voice of inspiration, of strength, and of unity for the Jewish people. And tell me if you're not comfortable speaking about this, it's totally fine. We'll move on to something else. But I just know that a lot of my students may not be aware or may not remember well what took place, what happened with your beloved Naftali back in 2014. So I'm just wondering if you could share something about him and I guess what took place back in 2014 with his friends Gilad and Eyal.
Sure. It's a little bit weird speaking about it this year. When I was trying to explain to a friend why it's so awkward this year, and he said, "Oh, I get it. You're a character from a previous season." And in a way,
Yeah.
yes.
Wow.
Our son was a 11th grader in the yeshiva high school, Mikol Chaim, very special place.
Yeah.
And he was on his way home on the last day of school with classmate Eyal, and then they got to the bus stop and they met. Sorry, Gilad is a classmate, and in the bus stop they met Eyal that is 2 years older than them and happened to have been there. And from the point of view that we're, now I can tell you that a car of Palestinian Hamas terrorists from Hebron stopped by. They were dressed as religious Jews. On the radio, they had a Jewish religious program on, and they offered them a ride. And the three of them went into the car. These are three strong young boys, tall. And that's the last we knew for 18 days. They were kidnapped by Hamas. And there was an operation to search and rescue for them. In Hebrew, we called it Shuvu Achim, but its English name was My Brother's Keeper. Like in the Bible, it's a rhetorical question. Am I my brother? And here it was with an exclamation mark. I am my brother's keeper. And for 18 days, somehow the whole Jewish world was involved. And this became like a focal point of everybody's prayers and involvement and hopes. And we were really quite optimistic. And eventually, after what at the time seemed to be, endless, just took forever. But now, 18 days. Yeah, what is it? We're up to 474 days. And these were 3 boys, and we started out with 240 hostages. So everything, the proportions became very different. But eventually, they were found. We found out that they were murdered. It was a kidnap situation, but apparently the terrorists knew that we will be willing to go a very long way, even if they don't remain alive, just to get them back. And yes, that's the outline. And within that, there were endless minutes of hardship, of faith, of support, of unbelievable sense of peoplehood and an extended family, with Jews all over the world and with all parts of Israeli society. It was just beyond the grief and the hardship. It was an extraordinary experience. We learned a lot from.
I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday, and I remember davening for your son, for the other boys, and I don't ever remember in my lifetime feeling that sense of achdus, and you were at the center of it. You were channeling all of that love and unity, all those tefillot, all those prayers. Did you feel that again after October 7th? The Jewish people kind of coming together. Did that remind you a little of what you experienced, the feeling that everybody was with you, behind you?
So, first of all, to begin with, 10 years ago, we felt like we're on the receiving end of this tremendous hug that actually kept us sane, actually, kept us, when you go through a horrific nightmare, it makes all the difference in the world if you feel you're going through it alone, or if you feel that you have like circles and circles and circles of prayers, of positive energy, of, and any kind of support. We went into this war from a very, very, very low point in Israeli society as far as achdut and solidarity goes.
Yeah.
But very soon after, both from the Israeli perspective and from the diaspora perspective, yes, we felt we're sharing something that to begin with was just the solidarity. You speak to communities all over, and they just tell us what we can do, show us how we can help, and then it went the other way too, because we were very worried. We still are very worried about what goes on overseas in all the communities around the world, and it had a lot of the same. It was like in a way, the lessons that we learned then became apparent again.
Yeah.
It was more complex in many ways. A few of the topics that we didn't get into dispute at the time became very conflictual. But I remember myself, at the time, each one of us asked, "Okay, so what's my role? What can I do?"
Yeah.
And one of the things we found ourselves doing is speaking to all these people from overseas that are asking us what we can do, and explaining how crucial the support was for us at the time, and how it has real meaning when you personalize it, when you send the prayers, the letters, sometimes people think that they might be doing it, for their own feeling or for educating their kids, and they don't realize that it really makes all the difference in the world. So we were out there trying to somehow mediate that and tell people about how essential it was.
I mean, does it affect, I know the impact, let's say, on the increased antisemitism in America or on college campus, or the fact that people we thought were our friends were either silent or even supportive on some level of what Hamas did on October 7th. Does that impact you a lot, or is it like you're just surrounded by enough Jewish people and that big hug that you just said, or that really does get, because it gets us, chutz la'aretz and diaspora Jews, it gets us down a lot. I'm wondering, does that have that same impact? Because what happened to your son, Zichron Livracha, like everybody was just positive about that. There wasn't any, everybody came down on Hamas. Look, they took these three boys. It wasn't that controversial and political. This became super political. I'm just wondering what impact that had on you personally and Israeli society.
I think both on a personal level and a society level, there are the issues of us being genuinely worried about our
Right.
extended family overseas, and being very aware of things that are going on. Sometimes you walk around Israel and you used to feel like Israelis feel like they're the center of the world, and there are Jews in other places. Whoever knew?
Mhm.
And I think it's no longer that way. People are very much aware of what goes on in campuses, and any community that's threatened or gets into a conflict. People are very, very aware of it. So that's a real thing. And
Mhm.
beyond, sometimes we count 7 frontiers for around our borders and within, and then there's the frontier of diaspora Jews, and there's a frontier of Israelis all over the world, and we have this tendency to get all over the world,
Yes, you
and
do.
these yeah, and these present a real concern for us, and also a very strong sense of responsibility. So that's one side of it. And the other side is, the aspect of hasbara. We're so we have this very problematic way of dealing with getting our story out there. And this is something our enemies of different kinds are very good at.
Yeah. Well, they're also
So
bigger,
that
they're
yeah,
also there's just so
the
many
numbers.
more. I see it on my Instagram reel when I post something pro-Israel. The numbers of negative are just so beyond what we could ever produce, just
Right. It's
numbers
also
wise.
so easy to drown it by,
Yeah.
you get your, but that is often very frustrating. And we all realize it's going to get worse very quickly now, as journalists go into Gaza and get out their, pictures they haven't been able to take up to now. Um, Nobody's really bothering to give it context, to, they like to omit the parts that they like to omit. So it is going to get worse, and that's both frustrating and causes worry. So yeah.
Yeah. Tell us a little about your activism since October 7th. I know that you spoke at the United Nations Human Rights Council, um,
You
rallies
mean
through,
since 10 years ago?
I mean, since 2014. I'm sorry, that's
Right,
that right.
right,
But
right.
but do you feel that experience somehow has helped you give chizuk support to the families of hostages, or to any of the families of the any of the soldiers who've lost their lives defending Israel these last few months?
Um,
Hmm.
so at the time, we growing out of the grief and everything surrounding it, we were walking around with, first of all, a tremendous sense of gratitude, and which is quite a heavy weight on your shoulders. You feel like, wow, there are millions of people around the world that I'm grateful for, that were with me in the worst time of my life. And the other side of it was this sense of responsibility, that something of the spirit must stay alive, and this ability to care and to be involved and to unify. And so since then, we've been, more on the active side. For me, it mostly was doing everything I was doing before, just much more intensively.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then there's the issues you just brought up, and that again connects to, we each and every one of us was looking for, okay, what's my share, and what could I do, and how could I.
Right.
So in the beginning, I thought I knew something about kidnapping, about Hamas, about murder, and for a certain extent of time, it was effective with families of hostages to a certain extent. I think after a while, and this has been a very, very long while, the pains that were very critical and acute in our story became a very chronic pain, an
Mhm.
ongoing
Mhm.
suffering that is a totally different experience. And so I deeply
Wow.
I understand that I don't understand.
Right, because you mentioned before 18. I jotted down that number. You waited
Mhm.
18 days. Some some of them are waiting 474 days.
Yes,
So I guess
yes,
you can't.
yes,
I guess those are qualitatively different
yes,
experiences,
yes,
even if it's kind of dealing with the same.
right,
Wow.
right.
I mean, are
So
you?
the other side of it, I'm sorry,
Yeah, no, please.
is that you were talking about, like you walk into a shiva and to trying to visit people that are grieving and staying in touch with families that lost dear ones. So that's hardly anything that's unique to me.
Right.
There's like a subculture of people that have gone through something and have experienced not only the hardship but also the support. And there's tremendous support. In that sense, we're extremely we're very very proficient at being there for people and staying there long term and being sensitive. You try to give back, and I have my messages that appeal to me. I never know what somebody else's experience of loss and choices of loss are, and personality type.
Yeah.
They can only offer the way what was meaningful and helpful for me.
Yeah, but I can't imagine. I mean, even just speaking to you now and hearing the way you speak, like the concept of imo anochi b'tzara, that I'm with you in your pain. I remember when my mother had passed many years ago, and she was very young when she died. It was hard for me to receive nachama, like comfort from people who didn't go through what I was going through. So I would imagine that you've been a tremendous source of comfort to.
Kulam, just like anybody else. But you're right. I think people have, based on their personality type, based on their experience, based on their life situation, they're going to experience things differently.
Right,
And
right.
it's very important that all types of people walk in, and you find yourself saying, okay, that's not for me, but maybe that. I
Mhm.
can connect to that idea. And sometimes, you don't say a word, and people would whisper to you, just seeing you here makes me optimistic. And okay, wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. Could you comment on, and if you don't feel comfortable, and we don't have to get political, but I'm curious about your thoughts about the ceasefire and the new hostage deal. I'm sure it's complicated.
Complicated. I'll say
Yeah.
this. Um, you know, just about a year ago, somebody showed me an interview I did, I think, for Times of Israel,
Hmm.
where the person who interviewed at some point asked me, it was during the kidnapping of our son. At the time, we were optimistic, and it was maybe 10 days into it. And he asked me, okay, so what do you think about deals where you exchange terrorists for hostages? We have a history with that, and what do you think of that? And I just a year ago, when somebody showed it to me, I heard myself saying, it's a little bit strange to this.
Yeah.
Oh, that lady! Look at what she's saying. Um, that this is a very, very complex question, and a heavyweight question in Israeli society. It has security aspects and ethical aspects and religious aspects, etc., etc., etc. And and I'm not even sure why it's for me to answer. But maybe you'll come back here in a few days or in a while, and you'll see me shouting from all the rooftops, do everything, and give everything. I want to tell you now, don't listen to that lady. Do what is right.
Hmm.
And these days, I find myself saying another perspective.
Do it as
And
right.
so
When you say do it as right, you mean from an ethical perspective.
I mean, from the calculation of everything together, there's no
Hmm.
one simple answer. And today I can add another perspective, because today I know that my son's murderers were released on the Gilad Shalit deal. Okay, that's
Oh.
they were set on the they did some terror act where they got into jail. Then they were released in a hostage deal, and then they murdered my son and Eyal and Gilad. Now, I can say again, okay, how dare you? How could you do all the future lives that are lost? It's just because there's no name tag and who's going to die. We know they're going to die. And I say again, don't listen to me. We have to listen to the calculation of balancing this impossible balancing act. And the truth is, I'm not sure we had any other choice. I mean, it could have been handled this way or that way, or being a little bit better, or sooner or later, whatever. Today, it's in general, I'm roll the deal very heavy-heartedly. Okay, it's not simple at all, and the sense of not the sense of how could you release the person who killed my son. It's not about that. It's about the future lives that we're endangering.
Of course. I can't imagine. I can't. I'm sorry if this is. I'm sorry. I'm not, responsible, but I just want to express my sympathy for you that this has to constantly be. I don't know if this triggers, if it's like a reoccurring thing every time a hostage in a discussion about this happens. I just think it's important because you're a Torah educator, and I find you to be so incredibly inspirational and deep in terms of the Torah you teach. You're a very, very unique voice because you're not just a mother who lost her beloved son. You're a Torah educator, mother who lost a beloved son. So you have a certain perspective, and I think that's very, very unique. So that's the only reason I'm bringing this up again. So
I have no problem discussing it, and I think even though the war was in a sense was triggering, but we don't live our lives through this very narrow perspective. It's in a wider sense. We mentioned walking into a shiva, and what I would like to whisper to the people. I don't always find myself saying all these things. It's not always proper, but one of the there are many things to say, but one of the things I find myself thinking and sometimes saying is, I can feel pain. I don't have to become my pain. I can feel sorrow. I don't have to become my sorrow.
So that is such a powerful message that I really want to bring that out a little for our listeners, because everybody on their own level is dealing with something, maybe not as extreme and dramatic as what you've had to contend with, but not having to become the pain you're experiencing. Anything else you want to say about that? I love that.
So first of all, in the context of what we brought up, this is not my only point of view on the world. It's not like anything you'd say would trigger me. Okay, this is part of my life experience, a very, challenging part. But it's not, my worldview isn't only through that little, peeking hole. Yeah. But beyond that, it's like, this works for pressure. It works for anxiety. I can feel the pressure. I don't have to become the pressure. I can feel the anxious. I don't have to become my anxiety. In my inner landscape, there are so many shades. There's the successes and the hopes and the failures and the disappointments. And, there's a whole array of things. And often a person is in a situation where, no one, there's so much hardship. No one would blame him if he takes this bucket of black paint and spills it all over their life. But I'm not judgmental to anybody else, but for me, it would be, first of all, kind of silly, but also a tremendous ingratitude to all the tons and tons of blessing I have in my life. So
can I just stop you there quick?
Yes.
How would you help somebody who's listening to this right now, who intellectually realizes they have blessings, but they're going through this difficult situation? It could be at work, it could be a relationship, it could be something more severe than that. How would you help that person see the situation and put it in context with everything else? You clearly have been able to do that successfully, and not look at the whole world through the lens of having lost your son. But it's how do you pull the lens back? How do we become better at being able to, have that broader vision and not just becoming one with the pain? That's a hard question, I know.
It is a hard question. I'll say our story started on Thursday, and the world became crazy. And then the first moments my husband and I had to be, quietly together with Shabbat evening. We went into our bedroom, and we were saying, even, God forbid, God forbid, God forbid, this goes in the wrong direction. We should remember how blessed we are.
Wow.
And I think that remained the core experience. The major tool for me, and I'm sorry it sounds so banal, is to practice gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, just noticing things and giving it the extra second to appreciate what I have. It also has religious aspects to it, but it's even, between us as human beings, the grace that people share with each other, and the kindness, and just to take the extra second, not to make everything, that's take it for granted, that kind of stuff. I think the ability to, and again, it's difficult to translate from the intellectual to the emotional, but to separate between me and my emotions. I'm a being made out of a lot of things, and
Mm-hmm.
part of it is my emotions, and part of that is this specific emotion. And just saying, okay, at the moment it's overwhelming, but it's just another thing that is part of me that I carry, that it doesn't define me. And this notion of not letting it define me, okay, so I have this in my past or this in my present. I'll try to gather the ability to deal with it, but I am not it. I'm not the pain. I'm not the fear. I'm not the anxiety. This is part of my experience. I think that's the direction I would go.
Beautiful. Thank you. And getting back to the practicing gratitude, any specific suggestions for our audience, for people listening in? You're a Torah educator. Like, what in Judaism helps you do that?
So the truth is that it's sometimes surprising how much these new age or positive psychology practices are already embedded in our not only day to day but hour to hour existence. You wake up in the morning, you make sure that the first thing that goes into your mind is a positive thought, and you say modani, you give thanks for this new morning, this new chance, this new experience. Each one of our prayers has a significant part where you dedicate to your daily miracles, to the things you give thanks to. It both two things happen when you devote that extra attention. It could be tiny. One is that you actually recognize, like you count your blessings. Otherwise, they could go unnoticed. And I'm sorry, it sounds banal, but it's a life changer. And the other is that usually you're on the receiving side of something that's directed towards you. It didn't come from nowhere. And then you acknowledge whether it's other people in your life or divine blessings. This is a daily practice. You take the apple, you say thanks for the apple. Nothing is taken for granted, but it's not in this very nervous, I don't know, heavy type of. It's more of a flow of the life thing that you incorporate.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I was going to split this conversation into two parts. One about Israel and your own experience in 2014 and how that's been, playing itself out these last years. And then you're a Torah educator, but you just transitioned for us so beautifully with that Torah. Tell us where women's Torah education in Israel is today. You've been at Nishmat, which is an amazing institution of higher Torah learning. I know it personally through my wife, through Jill, who studied at Nishmat years ago. And we've been referring people there for years, and I know you teach elsewhere. Also, maybe explain to our audience your role in teaching halacha, specifically as a yoetzet halacha, that's under that title. This is a whole new area for a lot of our listeners, and I was very, very excited to talk to you about that.
So, part of my blessings is that I'm in the time and age where the Torah world is open to me, and it's open to women in general, which traditionally wasn't so. The big ethos of Jewish life, which is learning and constant learning, and Jews are known to be brainy for that. They have this habit of constantly looking to learn and develop. Women were playing a very major supportive role, okay? Educating towards that and helping out with it and raising their children to that and sacrificing towards the ability to learn, etc. But through most of the generations, most of the women didn't take an active part in the learning itself. And over the past few decades, these doors have been open, and it started with Bible learning and midrash and commentaries and Tanakh in general, and then Talmud opened up, and the general concepts of Jewish law. And eventually halacha, which is, the practice of Jewish law. Part of my privilege is that I learned and teach in two amazing places, Matan and Ishmat, that play
I should have mentioned Matan. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
My yarmulke goes off to Malki Bina, who I apologize for that.
Exactly. So it's Chanahan Kinet et Nishmat and Malka Bina et Matan, and both institutions played a pivotal role and are still playing in enabling and just educating Jewish women Torah scholars. And today, the frontier that had developed over the last couple of decades is halacha, and that means that women that are versed in Talmud and Torah are also taking part in the halachic discourse and are answering Jewish law questions of how to how things should be done and how to behave, etc. And specifically, you mentioned Yatzot Halacha.
Yeah.
So this whole field of Jewish family law and generations and generations of Jews practicing things that actually regulate a lot of the very intimate parts of Jewish life. And women were always very, very devoted to it. Sometimes, it took extreme measures to remain devoted to it. But they whenever they had a question, they would have to consult with a rabbi. Whenever, a lot of questions weren't asked because it was too intimate and they were too shy and whatever. And today you can speak to women about such topics, and family issues of halacha are discussed with Yatzot Halacha. And that's a tremendous gift to the world. Just the ease and the open conversation and the communication. And, I can tell you of no number of times where somebody came over and with a baby in their hand and said, this is because of you guys, because in the right time I asked the right question and a problem was solved and there was openness. And just making that
and I know that it's opened besides from the educator's perspective, the people asking the questions are more likely to ask questions of a fellow female than they probably are of a rabbinic figure. Why do you think it hasn't taken as root? I mean, I know this from personal experience because we're always trying to hire women Torah educators, and we've had some amazing women over the years, but there's so much more of them in Israel, and they all seem to go to Israel. There's like a little of a spiritual brain drain.
Women, and then they make aliyah.
They make aliyah. I mean, look, it's because I guess we brainwash them in the right way. I guess it's not just that.
Your education is too successful.
Yeah. Well, my son, my youngest son, just turned 22. Just made aliyah about 6 weeks ago, and when my wife turned to him, thank you, and said, Yehuda, why are you doing this? And he turned back and said, are you really asking me that question after everything you taught me and all the schools you sent me and all the MJ trips to Israel? So I know that.
Why are you doing this to me?
Exactly. Or me. It's hard. We actually have two boys living in Israel now, our oldest son and our youngest son. And we're very, very proud. But getting back to the women's education, I just find it very inspiring for the women who come to MGE, who come to Manhattan Jewish Experience, to hear from other women, to hear their Torah, to hear their answers to their halachic questions. And just wondering, how to build that up somehow more in the United States, because the trajectory for all of those female Torah educators is always east. It's always to Israel, which is where we should all ideally be, and B'ezrat Hashem will all be there. But in the meantime, we have a couple of 100,000 at least, not millions, of I don't know. I don't even know if I have a formal question that I'm asking. I'm just a little, and we have amazing, again, not to, all the women who worked at MG all the years are like, well, what about me? We've had amazing women. We do now. We hired a woman, Rifki Siderson. She's on our staff now. And there's another woman who's been doing some amazing teaching here. Anything you could suggest?
Look, I know that on our side, on the right side of the ocean, we do our best. For instance, Nishmat trains Yotzot in New York. I personally train Yotzot in London. So it's growing slowly, but it's growing. Now we're doing it over Zoom. There are women joining in from Australia, etc. And Matan, they have programs like Eshkolot that trains Torah educators on the higher levels of Tanakh and etc., including Israel visits, etc. But it's surprising, and I'll even I think strengthen the question. A lot of the institutions in Israel were originally founded by Anglo-Saxons, by American Jews, mostly American women. And for a very long time, the whole women's Torah world in Israel was considered a little bit American. Today, not, thank God, we grew over beyond that. But when you go back to Manhattan, there used to be this school and there used to be that school. And today there isn't so much, if you want really high level Jewish learning, very specific programs. I find myself surprised, if a woman comes back from a seminary year, which I find to be such a tremendous treasure. Anybody of the listeners has a brother or sister in the crucial age, don't let them give up the experience. It's such a gift of growth and exploration and Jewish identity. It's beyond words. And then they come back to America. And with college studies and whatever, they want to grow in Torah. And I just agree, the opportunities aren't all that great. There are some wonderful places, but less than you'd expect.
No, they're really very, there's GPATs at Stern and there's here and there, but it's very far and few between. And
so I must say that, thank God, a lot could be done today through the web. It's not like having your own chavura and your own chibuta, etc. But it's out there and it's reachable and it's accessible, but it's not good enough.
No, you need real teachers, and I think the community suffers to some degree because it's 2025. We can't have men continuing to do and say everything. There needs. My rabbi, blessed memory, Rabbi Grumblat, I don't know if you've heard of him. He was a big Talmud Chacham, and he was the rabbi of my community in Forest Hills, Queens, where I'm from. And he was a little more to the right, I guess. He was a Musmach of Torah Vadas, and he was a very broad-minded thinker, though, and also very practical. And he said, our women are getting masters and doctorates in physics and everything, and philosophy, and we're going to keep women at a 8th grade, 10th grade, 12th grade level of Torah education. It's going to make Torah look silly.
The Lubavitcher said exactly that. They're becoming neurosurgeons, and you can't keep the Torah infantile. It's an insult to the most important aspect of your life.
It is, and so I don't know. I'm frustrated, and I'm in the outreach world, so I'm like even more of a niche kind of rabbinic field. I've been teaching at YU for the last 14, 15 years, like an outreach seminar. And it's all for guys because we don't even have an outlet really for women to go into Jewish outreach and education because 15%, maybe 20% of the American Jewish community is engaged in some kind of Torah learning. The other 80%, which is our target population, who are we using to engage that much larger group? It's all men. I mean,
so I make, excuse me for making the question even worse. Okay, there to the other aspects that come in here. One is, and I don't know how much it is currently, but there was a point in time where, at least in the Reform and conservative world, everything new and exciting was happening by the women.
Yeah.
And I found that it was hurting the men because it was like, okay, why should I fight for an active role in the community? Let the ladies finally get. And I don't see the same phenomenon. Not for the there's a balance. It has a price and there are advantages. And I don't understand all the way what's going on with the rest of the spectrum.
I think
it's a question to me.
And the
other aspect,
yeah, please,
is that often when a person has, this inner debate and questions about in theology and in all the thoughts that things he wants to consider when taking any kind of spiritual path, there's a certain type of dilemma that women have when they feel unimportant in the Jewish world, or feel that they won't find their place in the Jewish world. Now, I think it's a mistake, but part of it stems from this idea that, well, where can I grow and where can I work and how will I bring my talents to be expressed, and that's specifically for young women. I don't know how much you meet it amongst students. What, does God not like me, or the feminist aspect of faith question? It's a real question.
It's a real question, and I'm wondering how many. I mean, some of it's just money. Unfortunately, the same reason why there's less young men going into the rabbinate today in the last 20 years than, let's say, when I got smicha. When I was coming out, it was like growing, and now it's just so expensive to live if you're living in the tri-state area or even anywhere in the States and live an observant Torah life. It just costs more money, harder to do.
School, tuition,
day school. And then now we have men and women working. Most husbands and wives are both working. So, this is very autobiographical. I have a daughter who's 20. She's in Stern, and she came back on fire from her gap year. She went for 2 years to study in Israel. And she's very into learning, but there isn't a very clearly defined role of what, get this degree, you'll get a job in this place. It's just very loosey-goosey here. I don't know. I don't mean to just complain. I would just love to see. I
think it's a challenge all over because, it's not like in the old times, rabbis made a lot of money, but I think the role in the community and the respect and the idealizing of how important Jewish education is, and maybe, what you compare yourself to, what other people make in other professions.
Right.
It's a problem in Israel too. It's not just an American problem.
I mean, is there anything, any moral or spiritual insights that Jewish women, let's say in Chutz La'aretz, here in the diaspora, can learn from Israeli women about this issue and just in general, just pulling the lens back a little?
So specifically about this, and I don't know how current my knowledge of what's going on in America is, but one of the phenomena in Israel, since there were two issues that didn't come up in Israel. There was no money in the field for anybody, men or women, and there were no titles in the field. Israelis are not so big on titles.
Right. Americans are very big on titles. Right. We love titles.
And hence the growth of women into the Torah world was very much organic and grassroots and filling needs and growing into positions and just the community absorbing women into different so there was less conflict around it. I felt in America there was a lot of tension, open orthodoxy, this, that, and
right, the status,
and had a lot to do with the title and with the money,
right, and not with just learning and teaching, right. And that's a very accurate distinction. Anything else that you actually gave a beautiful talk in honor of the late Rabbi Jonathan Sachs about Judaism's 10 important ideas. What would you say? You mentioned one before about practicing gratitude and how it's woven into our tefillot and our prayers. Anything else of Judaism's most important life-changing ideas that you feel strongly about?
Wow. If you bring up Rabbi Sachs, and he's an endless well of encouragement in such days, I want to relate to these times, to time. It's difficult in Israel. It's difficult in the diaspora. Rabbi Sachs had this habit of taking two concepts that sound very similar and defining them where you can tell the difference. And there are a couple of them that come into my mind now. One is he often spoke about the difference between optimism and hope. And he said that, optimism, I'll say it in Israeli style, optimism, you say, yeh beseder. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's, this, and it's a bit of a passive, not committing kind of optimistic view. Hope is a very active, committed statement that says, if we put our efforts together, if we put our minds and our hearts together, if we work hard, if we invest, if we become vulnerable, together we could make things better. And hope has there are ethic implications to that. It's not just this notion, things gonna work out. It's I'm willing to be courageous about it. I'm willing to cooperate in that context. So that's one thing we, all of us carry this definition of what does it mean to be hopeful for the Jewish people? What does it mean to be hopeful for the Israeli society? What does it mean to be hopeful for the world? And there's a lot more than just saying, yeah, beseder. So that's one thing. The other thing is he speaks in length about the differences between happiness and joy. And this notion that happiness is, when everything's perfect and everything the way it's supposed to be, but joy lives in the moment. And it's very difficult to be happy in, times where, everything's unclear and, you don't know where things are going. And the uncertainty is very, very difficult, but you can choose to be joyful. Mm-hmm. And that choice you can share with other people. And
I love that.
What I felt very strongly.
Joy is more of an immediate thing you can choose to bring into your life, even if what's going to happen
the world isn't perfect.
Is unknown. Right.
And this notion that I can be joyful, I can even if I'm not happy, I can choose to be besimcha is a major issue. And it's I'll add to it one more perspective. There's this very famous Nachman of Breslau quote that says that a broken heart and atzvut would be depression or despair or the poisons of our life are not the same thing. A broken heart is very dear to Kadosh Baruch Hu, to God, and is like kind of is a sort of a treasure. And the atzvut, the depression, the despair, that he says in harsh words, he says God hates that. And the truth is, the difference is when you're brokenhearted, you have permission to feel. You let yourself be vulnerable. You let yourself for a certain amount of time really take in the hardships, the difficulties, even the worries, and says, it might have been a good idea to walk around, with your heart in your sleeve all day, brokenhearted, but people like us might be drawn from that to despair, to depression, to the poisons of our life. So he says, the idea is to choose or have he calls it an hour a day, but I'll translate it into have an allowance, allow ourselves to be at some point and sometimes that, as much as it's good for us to be brokenhearted. And in other words, vulnerable, in other words, connected to the difficult parts of reality. And the rest of the time, and this sometimes sounds really like a profanity, the rest of the time he says you should be besimcha, you should try to be in joy. You see serious joy? Do you see what's going on? Do you see? And the truth is, you speak to people and you find the ones that find it very, very difficult to allow themselves these corners of being truly brokenhearted, truly vulnerable, and others that find it very, very difficult to allow themselves to connect to joy. And eventually, during this difficult time, I think the greatest challenge for each of us is to be like the CEO of our, emotional capacities, mental capacities, to balance this balancing act. There isn't a separate lifetime for heartbreak and a separate lifetime for joy and happiness. It's eventually you have to hold both of them together. So it's about finding the allowance, letting yourself be in this state at certain times if it doesn't drain you altogether, and then letting yourself, show a happy face that's like, Rab Nachman says, it's like mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to the next person. You pass it on. Rav Zaks also has this gorgeous description how really you start healing the pains of this world through thanking and passing on some of the joy to the next person.
Wow. So, what I'm hearing, first of all, I've been jotting some stuff down. So if ever I'm looking down, you just said something to become the CEO of our emotions. And I think many of us have been, I don't know, trained to think that our emotions are what happened to us. We can't really control them. My son likes to say, my oldest son who lives in Israel, very into Rav Nachman of Breslov, and he says, we can't necessarily control, the Baal HaTanya, I know, says this, we can't control the thoughts that come into our mind, but we can kind of, like my son likes to use the expression, we can swipe them. We can swipe them away. You don't have to entertain those thoughts. And you said something earlier in our discussion about choosing not to be the pain, that there is pain, there are difficult circumstances that we all go through in life, but that doesn't have to define us. And now you're saying it in regard to having a broken heart and at the same time, practicing joy. Like you said, practicing gratitude. It's all the same theme of like that these are choices. And I just think that's like that to me, that's a little of a chiddush. That it's not it's like if you're happy because good things are happening to you, and that's great, then you're going to be happy. And we're just the sum total of circumstance, of circumstantial situations in life, and there's no choice there.
I think I connect to your son by saying maybe I don't swipe them, I acknowledge them, and I let them go. Now they don't always move on so quickly.
Yeah,
but
right.
When you meet someone and you especially young people and they're in pain and you want to assess the extent of where they're at, if they think that everything since forever and for the end of time, everything's black. You have this sense of it encompasses all. It's since whenever I remember myself, and it's going to be that way forever. Okay, this is a person who's deeply depressed. He needs a whole different type of maybe professional help. Most of us can really take control of a lot of that. Acknowledging, entertaining parts of it, and brokenheartedness is precious. It's a place where we're cracked and oxygen could go in and something can grow. I'm not, for a minute
because we've made ourselves vulnerable, we opened ourselves up. So then That's
Yeah.
something valuable can come in. You mentioned Rabbi Sachs. He had this other great thing I saw in one of his books. He says if you take a piece of paper, just like a blank piece of paper, and you draw a little dot on it, so the eye goes right to the dot. And
What's
we can
that? It's a black dot.
Just the black dot. That's where the eye is drawn, not at all the white space surrounding it. And that's just the human tendency to be drawn, to be focused. We see this in media. If it bleeds, it leads, right? If you want to make sure that your podcast or whatever it is more listened to, then you'll get more negative, because we're just drawn to that somehow, and that's kind of sad. This has
The
been,
truth is,
yeah.
yeah, I'm
No,
sorry.
please, no. The truth is, yeah.
There's something about, sometimes when you're in the very dark spot, it's difficult to handle it on your own. But there's a big role for close friends, for family, for the people accompanying you or the people that you accompany, that says, it gives proportions. It shows you the white parts. It reflects the blessings of your life. You can be there for somebody else. You have a role, and people need you. And it's not only about my singular existence. It's so much about the interactions between us. One of the things, sometimes people say, in Israel at least, you should always merit to be on the giving side. And you say, really? No, no. Where once you're here, once you're there, sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the ability to receive from them. And that, when I'm thinking about the black dot and all the background, so much of it happens in the relationship. So much happens the way we mirror to each other. Things are not exactly the way, and we're going to hang around, and we're going to keep on hugging you, even if you're in a very dark place at the moment. And one day you'll do the same for us. And things are worth living and going through and getting to better places. I'm just saying, you were showing the black spot and everything around, and everything around often is other people in our life that have a role towards us, and we have a role towards them, and so much that goes on there.
Wow. Racheli, thank you so much. This was so beautiful and inspirational. And this last hour was just really, you're just a tremendous light. And
It's been a pleasure.
really just, how do we, do you come to America? Can we get you? It'd be such a zechut, such an honor to host you sometime, to speak sometime. It would be so awesome. We also bring groups to Israel, where we brought 45 people to Israel last summer, like with Birthright, like a volunteer, but also educational group.
Wow.
So we should.
It has been very meaningful being here last summer. Oh
yeah, it was incredible. We were trying to combine our regular educational, inspirational trips with like real volunteering. We woke them up at like 5 a.m. We were in the farm at the farms at 5:36 in the morning. And it was a very powerful experience. People really rose to the occasion also. Yeah. So I hope this will just be the beginning. Bezrat Hashem.
Bezrat Hashem. Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
It's really, really amazing. You should continue to just inspire and educate, and just be the role model you are to a lot of other women that are coming up through the ranks. Hopefully some of them will stay here long enough for us to benefit from them before they make Aliyah. I mean, I hope I didn't come across like, oh, we're upset.
No, we know. It's a huge problem with being really successful with your education.
Yeah. And, by the way, there was just as an aside, Rabbi Lamb, Zochron Lavracha. I'm sure you heard of Rabbi Dr. Norman Lamb.
My father's Chavruta.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. In America?
Yes, in Yitzhak Elchanan.
Oh, NYU. Wow. Whoa. Okay. So we named our fellowship program for Rabbi Lamb. I was very close with him. And every year he would speak at the end of the Grus, which is YU's program in Israel. And a lot of the rabbinical students do a year or two learning, and then they come back. And Rabbi Lamb at the end would then say, okay, you had your time in Israel. Now it's time to come back and serve the American Jewish community. We need you back in the States. And then Dr. Miller, I don't know if you remember Dr. Israel Miller, a blessed memory, he was the vice president, would get up right afterwards and say, a Jew belongs in Israel. You're here now. there are a lot of needs here in Israel too. You could stay here. Literally, they used to have this little yin yang every year with each other. So I guess the Jewish community is going through that right now. But I really thank you for just your insights and your inspiration, and just Hashem should bless you and your family.
Thank you. You should continue more and more of your amazing work I've been following.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.